the fellows have picked enough knowledge for them to independently be able to put together a manuscript. Today we'll be looking at some little but very important aspect of manuscript writing, which speaks to how do you put your title together, how do you write your abstract, and the other things you need to do in terms of going ahead with publication. You're going to be getting that knowledge today. It's usually a very interesting one, listening to Prof discuss this, and I'm sure you're going to be very equipped to handle this session of writing by the end of this training program. Thank you very much. Prof, over to you, ma.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kudus. As you were speaking, I just remember the last set. You remember one of the things when they were doing their video, and then they said one of the jokes, one of them said was this: good morning, Prophet Solomon. I hope. So that was what I remember. Good morning, everyone. I'm sure at the end of 24 weeks, you're going to have multiple little memories. I'm remembering some of the jokes or some of the extracts from the last set's teasers, and I'm just smiling. I look forward to having that. Unfortunately, I've not engaged a lot with your set. Well, week 19, you guys have 5 more weeks, but I would like to hear from you how much and how empowering this sessions has been to you. There is a constant guy, he's Idol from Ghana. Are you here today? If you're here, just send an e-signal, an e-wave, or just say hello. Thanks for being consistently here. So yes, in terms of the entire series of manuscript writing, we're about getting to the last part of it. This is actually the last part. You would be surprised that the last thing you write is abstract, and then you recheck your title. Many times you would start with a title, but that is not the final title. You have to do the check of your title last. And then you write your abstract second to the last. It comes first in the manuscript, but the last to write. You can write an abstract, be it for your manuscript or be it to send it to a conference for presentation without having done the entire thing. You would need the minimum, your methodology and your result. And I repeat that, the methodology and the result to be able to write an abstract, even if you don't fully written your manuscript. I'll talk about what it means to write an abstract for the manuscript. That's the main emphasis. And what is the little tweak that you do when it comes to writing an abstract for a conference? But please never, ever submit an abstract to a conference for something you have not done. That means if you've not done it, you will be writing an anticipatory result, and that is completely false. It's unethical. It's a practice that receives serious sanctions. I am aware a lot of students do this in the name of trying to present for a conference. I have had to meet a few students who says, "What? You don't write an abstract without the body without the body?" And I'm shocked. How did you write your abstract without the body? It only means you fabricated a result which you assumed you would meet. And for very senior people, there's a way you pick. You would know that this is fabricated. That's why you must know how to write an abstract in a way that is convincing. Otherwise, you wouldn't get the marks that enables your abstract to go forward, including your manuscript. You would find out that your abstract is important for a number of reasons. One, if you submit a manuscript, the first engagement with the entire research team, the entire research enterprise is your abstract. The first set of people that will look at it are research assistants of the journal. They screen. If the abstract is poor quality and you're going to a Q1, Q2 journal, at that point they just send it. They don't want wahala. They don't need to waste their time. More than enough manuscript to deal with, how much more with the bad content, because your abstract suggests that your content is bad. So you must have your very strong abstract. If it goes through them, the next person that will look at it is the editor, because the editor will now have to choose the editor, the peer reviewer person that would manage the peer, part of their team that would manage the peer review process, which is usually a voluntary role. If at that time the abstract is washy-washy, but it escaped the research assistant. At that stage, they just sent it back. Believe me, Q1 journals, top Q1 journals, they probably just publish about 18%, 25% of the entire manuscripts that come into their stable. And even with that, in a year, they still publish over 1,000. So if it's wishy-washy, they don't have time with it. They just send it back at that table. The next thing that now happens, they say, okay, let's give it a try. They now push it to this volunteer set of people which are editors, editorial supports or editorial, their names they give. And that's where many of us want to be. They now start to seek and search for somebody who is interested to manage the process. I won't pick it when I read the abstract and I say, this abstract, this person doesn't know how to write to. This one is going to give me wahala. I don't want to handle a manuscript that 25 times you're still going back and forth. I rarely reject, I support. So if I'm going to still be writing 10, 15 times, I will pick it. If the abstract tells me this person is research savvy and it won't be a problem, I'll pick it. Of course, that's one of the many things that also affects your pick. You would also pick if you have the expertise. So if it's wishy-washy, 1 year, you're still looking for editorial manager. That's one of the reasons why even getting a review is long. Even after that, and then you get an editor, an editor, well, not really an editor, there's a way they call it, apologies, I can't remember, to manage it. That person now has to look for a peer reviewer. My brethren, if your abstract is wishy-washy, because all they will send to suggested peer reviewers is the abstract. If your abstract is not engaging, if it sends a message that this person doesn't know how to write, believe me, another 1 year, they're still looking for peer reviewer. And I can tell you that times I am still looking for peer reviewers. After 50, I'll be contacting 50, 55, even you yourself, you're tired. There was one that I was so tired that I had to write to the editor, please, will you change the status? Let me be the peer reviewer so I can review this paper. This thing is there. 1 year, I haven't gotten a peer reviewer. So your abstract is your first contact with the editorial world, and it has to be good and strong. So let's go through what makes an abstract good and strong. And it's the same thing for conferences. If your abstract is bad, remember you're not dealing with AIs are not the ones that are doing these things. They are human beings that are looking at it. And you have to engage with the emotions of the people. You do a bad abstract, the person is coming to you with a negative vibe, and it would mark you with a negative vibe. If you come with an abstract that is looking appealing, it's coming with a positive vibe. It's going to mark you with a positive vibe. So let's learn what it means, one, to write a strong abstract, and two, if there are people that do vibe things, we get the positive rather than the negative vibe. Once again, as we go through this, please know, okay, I usually have an abstract, an introduction that tells you you have to learn your styles. Styles evolve. You must choose the minimum benchmark. I encourage you from your first day, your minimum benchmark should be Q1, Q2 journals. There are quite a number of our mentees and people who've worked with that the first paper they ever wrote was in a Q1, Q2 journal, Q1 journal. And for every one of them, the minimum is the Scopus Index journal. So it's no big deal. It's absolutely no big deal. Once again, this is about simple as ABC. Learn the rules, learn the regulations, and just work within these rules and regulations, and you're a success story. The abstract has 4 sections. Many of you would know that. Please always defer to do not assume everything is like that. Always defer to the journal instructions to know what their own rules are. But conventionally, it's 4 sections. You have to write an introduction, you have to write the method, result, and conclusion. They would give you a number of words, whether it's for conference or for the manuscripts. Sometimes they would say 150 words, sometimes they would say 250, sometimes they would say 350. I don't think I've seen any journal go beyond 350. And 350 is usually exceptionally generous. If you do know how to write an abstract well, you may never need to use up to 350. You would comfortably sit within a 300 range. But what does it mean? It's about focusing on the essentials that tells the very appropriate stories of what you're dealing with. Your introduction at the first. Usually, in an abstract, they will ask you to write a background. Your main manuscript will start with an introduction, methods, results, and discussion and conclusion. Your abstract will write a background, and I'll explain why. And they would never include a discussion, and I'll explain why. So your abstract is a mirror of the main manuscript. Many people, out of 100, you find that many people will conclude on the content of your manuscript by reading the abstract. Many people, once they've read the abstract, they are done. They've moved on. They've gotten the entire gist. And many papers are quoted just because of the abstract. So it is very important that you make your abstract powerful. One of the things I also discuss with trainees is that there are three pieces of your manuscript that must stand independent of itself. The manuscript itself, it's the whole piece of work. Very good. But the abstract itself is a whole piece of work and it must tell the story. Just like your tables and your figures, they are independent stories on themselves. So if I get your manuscript paper, when I go to Iyaboli or the consular who still uses papers, and the paper I get for my Boli is your manuscript paper that has the results. I should be able to read that and interpret that table without looking for you. And you must have learned that when you are talking about the results. Your table must be able to say everything about it without me looking for you and saying what it is. So those are the three pieces. Your manuscript itself is a story, abstract itself is a story, and then your results in terms of the tables you do itself are stories, independent stories. So why are we writing a background, not an introduction? It's because the background has two things that must be there. One, an introductory piece that makes me see through the lens why we have to do the study. Maybe call it a justification for the study. And the second must include your aims and objective, your objective more precisely, not the aim. And usually, when you write a very strong abstract, all you need is two sentences. Your background is not your major story. Your major story in a manuscript is the methodology. Your major story, I repeat, is the methodology. I say it the third time, the major story of your manuscript is the methodology. It's the major story in your abstract and it's the major story in your manuscript. Why? Because that is the evidence that shows that what you are sharing with the world is truly facts and not fake. I have done this rigorously enough that the results I'm getting, you can rely on it. So your strongest part of a manuscript, every other thing, newsletter, journals, you can play around with everything. And I heard from Kudus, I've learned, even the journalists, they don't play with methodologies, the long stories. But you as a scientist is the methodology. You have to show that you have done solid, rigorous, transparent piece of work, and the results I have, guys, you can learn it and go to bed because it's the facts that I've generated. So in a 300 words, 250 words paper, your 50% of your words goes to your methodology. The first two sentences, once again in the background, the first sentence is like a justification. It highlights the gap that you're trying to address. This is the justification. And then the second sentence tells the study objective. Gender-based violence is still a global problem, including in Nigeria. My study is looking at the association between gender-based violence and educational status. I like that's all. Sadly, one of the major problems we have in many manuscripts that comes from the space is that the 50% of the paper tends to become that background. So what am I going to go and read in the introduction when you've already written 200 words of background? And then the big story, the methodology, you now write two sentences. That's the end of that paper in a Q1, Q2 journal. For journals that are looking for papers, of course, they welcome that they have no index, they have no ranking, they have no position in the world. They're just those journals that do 50 publications and put it under the table. Those things don't matter. But we're talking about grounding you as solid researchers, and you must learn the right thing. Do not compromise. Everybody can be doing the wrong thing. You don't compromise on that. I want to say it here because I've seen it over and over. Many times we do training, and then people fall back to their old ways. Remember, once again, we're not training you to just be writers. We're training you to be researchers who write solid papers. And we're training you to write in Q1, Q2 journals. I always explain this kind of thing using the Bell's curve. I assume all of you would know the Bell's curve. The Bell's curve, the extreme right just have about 2.5%, the extreme left has 2.5%, and the majority, 95%, are in the middle. We're not training you to be part of the majority. We're training you to be part of the exceptional right wingers who do the right things. Of course, the exceptional left wingers, excellent robbers. I don't know if you've read about the robbery that happened in Europe. In 4 minutes, they stole jewelries from a museum in Europe. Those are the exceptional left who are brilliant, excellently brilliant, and they do negative things. There's an exceptional film I also watched about this guy who keeps beating systems, you know. But in fact, they eventually caught him, but they got him into the FBI's to be able to learn how his wisdom and use that to catch people. He could, he joined the air crews. Many times when I'm on the plane, I'm wondering how did this guy beat that system and became part of the crew, without ever training. So those are exceptionally brilliant criminals, and there are quite many, but they're just 2.5, and exceptionally brilliant bright ones are just 2.5. And hopefully you are counted amongst that. We're not asking you to be part of the 95 gap. So why did I say that? You can go back in your routine eventually, and you find people doing the things we're not teaching you, and they seemingly are publishing. They seemingly are publishing. Don't go that route. Stick with what you've learned here because you are being trained to be one of the exceptionals. And exceptionals don't do what everybody do. You do the things that are different. They will call you crazy. Be happy being called crazy positive because you will blaze the trail. So that's what background is. Just two sentences. The first highlights the gap. The second highlights the subject objective. And then the main story, your methodology. There are minimum things that must be in the main methodology. I'm sure when you were talking, when they were just teaching you about writing up your methodology, they would have showed you research guidelines. And you would have seen in the research guideline that a third to half of the entire paper is spent on methodology. Quite a lot of details are required. And that is what they look for in Q1, Q2 journals. That is the standard of writing. Once those things that are required to be there are not there, then you're falling short. And once the methodology is a problem, you get a reject. Introduction, you don't get rejects. Results, they can tell you to rewrite the results. They can encourage you to write discussions. I've written discussions that it's the entire thing that I've completely changed. But once the methodology is faulty, that's the end. There's no way you can revise it because you've done it. You've done it. So you can't revise it. So it's a reject. All right, guys, so this is methodology, and what are the things you will look for? There are critical things you must write in your methodology. Your opening sentence must be the study design. Is it a cross-sectional study? Is it a systematic review? Is it a rapid review? Is it a scoping review? Is it a cohort study? Is it case control? Is it a clinical trial? The opening sentence is the study design. Even if it's qualitative, you must tell us what it is. Is this a case study? Is this a phenomenological approach? Is this an ethnographic study? Qualitative study have designs, and we have spent time to enable you learn about this. Even if it's a mixed method, you say this is a mixed method, there are designs. Is it a concurrent? Is it there are 3 types of mixed method. You must state in the opening sentence. For those of you that do scoping reviews or bibliometric reviews or systematic reviews, you find that this becomes a problem. Many manuscripts don't tell you what the study design is, and then you have to struggle because you have to report it. And then you have to read and struggle. Many times they will tell you a study design that it is not. But at least you write what the study design is. That's your opening sentence. This is a cross-sectional study. You must tell us the target population and you must tell us the study location. And this is all just one sentence. This is a cross-sectional study that recruited adolescents 15 to 17 years old, residents in Ile-Ife, Nigeria, one of the 774 local governments in the country. That's a sentence, but I've written 3 essential elements that must be seen there. The next important element is the date of where your study was collected. This is very important to contextualize issues. You could have collected your data before the COVID. You could have collected it during the Ebola period. You could have collected it during the SDG period. You must situate. So this data was collected January to February 2025. This data was collected, to the date, whatever thing you're doing. The third, not third, but the other things that is very important is that you must clearly define your study variables. We have taught you very clearly when we looked at study objective that your variables must be clearly stated. I'm collecting age, I'm collecting sex, I'm collecting height, I'm collecting weight, and you must say how you collected it. Because although you're collecting sex, the way people collect sex vary. So I'm collecting sex. Maybe you're not going to write all those full. Maybe in the methodology, you write it full. But in the abstract, we must know the variables you're collecting because it's going to inform the results without explaining the variables. So usually when I write, I say this is my dependent variable or predictor variable. This is my outcome variable. And these are my confounders. Simple. But at least the variables are explained and those variables would reflect in your results. You must tell us the variables. And then you must tell us the statistical analysis. This is not about p-value is equal to 7.74 or this is not about starter. What is the statistical analysis that you did? So if I'm doing a regression analysis, I must explain it there that I used binary logistic regression to determine the association between the outcome and the predictor and outcome variables having adjusted for the confounders. Because I had defined the variables, this is my confounders, that is the simple sentence I usually write. It's the way I have learned around trying to shorten things, yet say everything that is important. Well, you must tell us the statistical too. If you use the chi-square, if you did a t-test, if you use the Whitney, whatever are the tools you used, you must define, you must tell that. That's what is important. There's not a starter that you use, that you did P is equal to less, that is not important. If you use the multilinear regression, if you used whatever it is that you use to determine. And of course, if what you did was just a prevalence and you described, then tell us that what you did was just to describe. These details must be there for you to say you have a good methodology. Remember, once again, the rejection of your paper is completely based on your methodology. The rejection of your abstract, even for you to move table from table to table to table, is your methodology. This is the minimum content that you must have when you're talking about your table. And Blessing, please mute your mic. The next thing that you then write is your results. Blessing, Ezenwa, please mute your mic. The next thing you write after your methodology is your result. What is the first thing that you write? It's the sample size. One of the things I see as a major error is many people write their sample size in their methodology. You can't write your sample size in your methodology. Your sample size is your result. You might have calculated a sample size, but what you finally recruited in terms of the size of your sample is your result. It's not your methodology. So your result starts with your sample size, and then you describe what your variables are. So if your outcome variable are, for example, in my own world, I look at carries. My sample, I recruited 100 children, of which 15 had carries. So that's 15 in bracket, 15%. One of the big headaches you find in results is that people write about percentages without putting the absolute number. That doesn't work. And I'll tell you why it doesn't work for research, because at the end of the day, your sample might be 10. So 10 out of 10 might end up being 100. 10 out of 100 is 10%. 10 out of 1,000 is 0.5. So when you write 100%, 10%, it makes no sense without the absolute number in front of it. And many people hide by writing percentage, So if I write and say, 100%, it looks big to you. But you know that 100% might just be five out of 5 people because they don't tell you the sample size. They tell you excellent methodology. They didn't tell you what the sample size is. And then they said 100%. It makes no sense when 100% is just 5. So you must remember one of the power of your abstract is the transparency. So you must write first the sample size. I collected 120 20 children. I saw around 20 children. I'm looking in that sense, even when I see that sample, is this powered enough to tell the truth? Is this powered enough to tell what you should tell? That itself is transparency. The next thing you then write is of this one, 120, 10 had carries, 1.2% or something like that. 10 in bracket 1.2, that's transparent enough. And then you go straight to your inferential analysis. What is the outcome of your inferential analysis? So there was an association between caries and the toothbrushing. It is not enough. Here, read my lips, read my lips. It is not enough for you to say in a scientific journal that I found an association between caries and the frequency of toothbrushing without putting the evidence statistically in that result section. Because anybody can wake up and tell you that caries is associated with toothbrushing. The only evidence that you did that statistical analysis is by putting the statistical figures, which means you will write in brackets the adjusted odds ratio, which shows clearly that without me reading the full abstract, that you adjusted for your confounders. That is power. If you put odds ratio, I know you did not adjust for the confounders, and then I know that this evidence, I still need to deal with it from some other ends. Second, you put the confidence interval range. That tells another powerful study. When the confidence interval is wide, there is a problem with the sample size. Maybe you did a sub-analysis, and therefore the sample to tell that sub-analysis is not powered to be able to tell that sub-analysis, even if the statistical, the p-value is significant. So your confidence interval must be there. If you need to drop anything, drop the p-value. You must put the confidence interval. Because when you put the confidence interval, scientists can read it and tell you what the p-value is. If the confidence interval is crossing the midline of 1, they know it's not statistically significant. If all of the confidence interval is on one side, negative to negative or positive to positive, they would know it's significant. We as scientists understand this reading. So if there's anything to drop there, drop the p-value. Don't put the p-value and drop the confidence interval and adjusted on the odds ratio, because those other two tells you powerful information that enables me trust the paper you are dealing with. If I'm communicating with somebody there, let me see your electronic hands. Just raise your electronic hands. I hope I'm not telling stories. I'll pause here if anybody wants to ask me a question. Of course, all those figures that I'm talking and telling you to ask, excellent, thank you. Keep it up. Let me just say, you must have done it in your results. Oh, very good, very good. I can see I am communicating with 2 persons. 3, okay, I see 4, 5, excellent. I'm glad. Oh, Jeremiah, you're back. How are you? We're sending you loves.
I'm fine.
Oh,
Thank you.
good. We hope you're doing well. Yeah. All right, great. I'm communicating with you guys. So that must be, without those figures, you cannot convince anybody you pressed your statistical analysis. And so it's not going to be trusted. If you present this abstract without those figures for conferences, the best you will get is a poster. Posters are good, but you won't get an oral because there's no evidence that you did that analysis. Those analyses, people can read it. You can't have a wide confidence interval and then put an adjusted odds ratio of something. They would know that there's something is wrong. All right. So that is very important. And this is one of the big pieces that I often see missing. However, having said that, there's a journal I engaged with sometimes. The abstract is 150 words, and they said specifically do not put statistical, don't put those figures. That's an unusual one, but that's the instruction. That is why you must go read journal instruction. Journal instructions are not the same across. They are principles, but they are not the same across. For example, there might be a journal that says, don't put those titles. Even if you don't put those background, method, results, conclusion, even if you don't put it, the content must have every single thing we're talking about. Okay, some are structured, and then there are some that are unstructured abstracts. Whichever one you're dealing with, please ensure you adhere to the journal. And then the final thing is the conclusion. The conclusion is just two statements. The answer to the study objective and your recommendation. Please ensure the recommendation is evidence-driven, is based on the study. Okay? Many times, this is also the flaw we see in abstract. The recommendation is so extraneous, nothing to do with the study. For example, I found out that caries is associated with toothbrushing, let's say. Let's say that is what I found. And then my recommendation, please ensure that every child, there should be distribution of free toothbrushing and free toothbrush to the school. Wow. How did you get that? Who says? Where's the evidence that says that if you distribute free brushing, they would use it? Where's the evidence that says if you give free toothbrush, it will be used in a way that it will affect caries? There's no evidence derived from your study. Why are you making an extraneous recommendation that has nothing to do with your study, even if it reads or sounds nice? So you cannot make a recommendation outside. Okay, you can make recommendation for further studies. You can make a recommendation that what you have is an hypothesis that needs to be tested. You can make other recommendations that are related to what you have done. You can't do extraneous recommendation. This is also one of the biggest flaws I find. But I think with time I realized that it might be skills and people don't know how to do linking things. If you remember from the very first day, we tell you everything you do must be linked from your abstract to your introduction to your result. Everything is linking. And when you read an abstract that has such excellent link, who is not going to pick it up? Who isn't going to pick it up? Not only will they pick it up, they want to read the full story. Okay? That is the power of your abstract. And then finally, once you're done with the abstract, please note that you go back to the study title. The first study title you write, please note it is a space holder, it's never the final. You then go back because you've now full, and then you follow the rules of study writing. Go back to your strokes, go back to your research guidelines. There are rules. In your study title, there must be information about your study design. There must be information about your study variables. There must be information about your study population and location. Many times you read abstract, you don't know where it was done. Was it done in Nigeria? Was it done the titles, you don't know where it was done. You don't know what the populations are. Fancy titles are very appropriate for conferences. It attracts. In an abstract title, you can say things like, are we going to survive the Holocaust? Evidence pointing to the upcoming Holocaust in the world. Those are fancy titles that can attract things. You can never write that kind of title in for a manuscript that is going to a serious journal. I don't know, I'm not talking about other journals. You don't write those. Your title must be factual, but it must be attractive in its way. So, for example, let's look at this, which is the title of a manuscript I wrote: Oral Health Practices and Oral Health Status as indicators of suicidal adolescence among adolescents in Southwest Nigeria. One, there's clarity. These are my three variables: oral health practices, oral health status, suicidal ideation. Those are my three variables. The study design. There is a way you would know the study designs in the study. It says oral health practices and oral health status as indicators. As indicators. For those that understand analysis, the way you write, once you see this, you know that you're dealing with a cross-sectional study. I did not say it is a predictor. I said they are indicators. When you're dealing with cross-sectional studies, you cannot be predicting. What you can be doing is suggestive. You deal with variables, you're not dealing with factors, you're dealing with risk indicators, you're not dealing with predictors. So your language matters. So once you see that indicator, it is very well clear that this is a cross-sectional study. And what's the study population? Adolescents. Where's the study location? Southwest Nigeria. Ideally, it could be a lot more precise if I was dealing with Ile-Ife. I think this is the flaw with this title. I wasn't dealing with Southwest Nigeria, I was dealing with Ile-Ife. And many of my titles you would see suburban region in Nigeria, Ile-Ife. So this is a misrepresentation because I did not collect samples around Southwest. I wasn't going to the six states. I wasn't going to representative local government in the states. I only went to Ile-Ife. So ideally that should be Ile-Ife, Nigeria. So this is a title appropriate, synthesized in a way that is not dull in terms of his reading, but yet every element that should be there is there. Before I go on to the rest of the body. Is there anybody that has a question? Anyone? Is there anyone that has a question for me? Familare, do you have a question for me? Familare Olowo, do you have a question for me? Okay. Familare, are you there? Or you've gone to bed? Blessing. Blessing, whose mic has been on since? Do you have a question for me, Blessing? Okay. Everything you're learning, everything you understand. Okay. Are your body the first man on board? Do you have a question for me? Are your body, Emmanuel, do you have a question for me? Okay. Can you allow them to unmute also if they want to answer questions?
They can unmute themselves.
Okay, so they've just chosen to be quiet.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right. Let's get a roll call after. Only those that can. Okay, there's somebody. Yes, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the lecture. I wanted to ask for the title. What if, like, when you are submitting to maybe it's in journal or for a conference, and your title is above the word limit, like, and maybe with your title you can make it more simpler or more shorter. What kind of technique can you do to, like, um, communicate what your title wants to communicate while making it more concise?
Yeah, excellent question. And yes, those are skills you must learn. Um, Not just for the title, but for the whole manuscript. When you're going to Q1, Q2 journals, many times they will give you word limit. So you must be able to say the things you want to say with in few words, you know, concisely. Even for the entire journal, like you would have heard that I just say, you never do African magic on Q1, Q2 journal. You can do African magic, West African journal, Nigerian journal, where we understand that we are very verbose people. We use many words to say one single thing. You want to, with storytellers as people, and that is okay. So West African journals, Nigerian journals, Ghanaian journals, they will take long stories that is saying one thing with 6 sentences. If you deal with the Europeans, and Americans, they're so precise. They don't waste words. So once you are writing, if there's any sentence that you can do away with, then do away with it. Like, African magic, like I share, I'm a woman. You can put on your video for African magic and you're watching it. Then you need to go and cook a pot of stew. You don't need to switch off the video. Just go cook the pot of stew, come back in 45 minutes, sit down, and you are still on top of the game. There's nothing. They would drive through the streets. You would have missed nothing. Watch an American movie. If you need to go cook your pot of stew, you need to put it on pause. Because if you leave for 30 seconds, the next scene, you can't link it. Because they are concise, precise, they're saying the same thing. And even many times at the end of the story is when you know what is how it's linking. They don't waste words. And it's the same thing. That thing you think you want to say, that you're saying in 30 words, you can actually say in 25. It's about learning skills of conciseness without losing meaning. You can do it. And remember also, you are a team. You must work with your team and your team must bring in the skills. One person cannot do everything. You must have your team bring in expertise. In my own team, my expert English lady is from UK, Jo Lucia. She would do this for me. My expert statistician is Maha El Tantani. She does the statistics. She's brilliant. She's the best I've seen anywhere. And then I have a backup, Ariel. So you'll see them always in my paper. When I have to do tables, draw graphs, the best of best is Abiola Deni. Even if she's not on my team, she's the one that draws all the graphs and the papers. Nadia, oh geez, Nadia knows what it means to put English together and translate that English to a table. So my team, I carry my team everywhere because we bring in different expertise, you know. So that is how your team must be. There would be somebody Jeremiah, in that team that can do this, reduce your words from 30 to 25, and you still maintain the meaning. I think there's somebody who does that, Professor Mark Bayi, Boladale. If I want to do it, I don't have to ask her to be on my team. I just go to her. She knows what it means to write. You know, those funky titles for manuscripts. Oh, Boladale knows that. So look for your team inside and outside, and you can engage without losing. What I'm saying, in effect, Jeremiah, you don't have to know everything, but you must have a team that you move around with that can bring in the expertise to make it work. But yes, you can be concise enough without losing meaning. All right, I hope I did answer your question. It's a long story as an African, but I hope I answered it. Did I answer your question, Jeremiah?
Yes, ma. Thank you, ma.
You're very much welcome. Any other person with a question, or otherwise I'll rush through the rest of it. Now that you've written, remember that if you finish your abstract, you finish your title, you're about to submit. Please, this is not the time to submit. Go through it once again. Go through it yourself and go through it with your team. As much as possible, always avoid a single author. Don't go into that route. Why? In a K1K2 journal, it will not be accepted because once you're a single author, the risk of telling lies is high. You can manipulate things, but it's a lot more difficult to say you've manipulated information with a team of 5, 8 people, 3, 5, 8. It's a lot more difficult. Not that it's impossible, but yes, it's a lot more difficult. So once you go into a K1K2 journal as a single author, in a paper that was not invited, they didn't ask you. How would you do your research on your own? You collected the data on your own, you they don't, so they'll just send it back to you straight. Okay, so it doesn't happen. So you must come with a team, and when you're doing your team, do not submit the manuscript without your team reading and putting their input. Okay, that is authorship criteria. Your team must read, your team must accept it, your team must put words, put input, and that's why once you submit manuscripts now, the journals sent it also to your co-authors to be sure that they are aware that they're submitting. Okay, so once you're reading, what you want to be sure is that things you're writing is precise. Every single sentence that is there is not subject to double interpretation. It is the same way I would interpret it as a Nigerian, it's the same way Danish should interpret it, the same way Polish should interpret it, the same way. No sentence must have double meaning. And that's it. It's a fundamental of science. It's a skill you can acquire, just like you can acquire crossword puzzle skills. It's about making communication beautiful. So remember that your framework has been shared with you. Every single type of research has its framework, the research guidelines. But that is not just enough. It's not enough to write the framework. Just like you have skeleton, we're all not working with skeletons. We have our flesh. But in addition to your flesh, the beauty comes with the dressing, the way you dress. It gives it beauty. But we're all the same as the skeleton. So even though you get the skeleton right, you must know how to put on the beautiful dress on it. Combine words, say things in a way that is beautiful, readable, and people would not want to put down your manuscript until they get to the very end. All right, but that's skills, and everybody in this world can acquire that skills. Nobody's born with the skills. We learn it. The more you write, the more you read other people's papers, you learn that skills. When they call you, you agree to be a peer reviewer because you learn by reading others and you give back to the scientific community. So I'll give a few examples. I have to finish this soon. I believe this words by Lewis Carroll that says, when I use a word, said Humpty Dumpty in a rather scornful tone, it means exactly what it's supposed to mean. For example, let's look at the first two words here. To determination of the prevalence of jaundice in preschool Nigerian children and determination of prevalence of jaundice in preschool children in Nigeria. Those two words are not the same. They are not the same. Those two sentences are not the same. Or those two phrases are not the same. When you look at the first one, it says determination of the prevalence of jaundice in preschool Nigerian children. It implies that you determined the nationality of every child you collected. And it was only those of Nigerian children that you determined the prevalence for. Whereas the second implied that for every child in a Nigerian school, in Nigeria, you determine the jaundice status of that child, and together you determine the prevalence. Unfortunately, many times people do the second, and then they write the first. It's two different things. So I say this slide to you to tell me the prevalence of jaundice, and then I look at your variables. You did not collect nationality. I mean, it's not telling the same thing. So these are the kind of precision that we're asking for in science. The second is more of an issue around communication, the risk of cancer in HIV children and the risk of cancer in children with HIV. The risk of cancer in HIV children is stigmatizing communication. It's stigmatizing communication. What you did was look for risk of caries in children living with HIV. You don't label. What you did in the first one is label HIV children, cancer children. You know, when you do that, you're labeling, and labeling is a stigma. So you must be careful with your communication. You don't know who you're going to deal with as a reviewer. If you happen to be dealing with somebody who's living with HIV, who's reviewing and reads these labels, of course, you're already getting antibodies against your manuscript. Communication matter. And we'll talk a little bit more about communication. Watch out for jargons. I'm sure somebody's talked about this. Don't use acronyms when they are not needed. The only time you use acronym is when you've used that same word 3 times or more. If you're only using that word once, you don't write an acronym. You don't write an abbreviation. If you're using it 3 times or more, then you use an abbreviation. To avoid new terminologies that has not become universal. Of course, if you are Wale Soyinka, who creates terminologies, you'll be respected. But we don't know you, they don't know me. Use terminologies that are conventional so you don't get rejected. Not that you are always after not getting rejected, but you are always after ensuring that your message is out there early enough for people to use it and to do work with them. Avoid judgment-laden terminologies. You are a scientist. You're supposed to be objective. It must be seen in the way you write that you're objective and not biased. For example, maybe you're here and you're a Catholic and you don't believe in contraception. You did a study on contraception, and then your language is showing that the people that are using contraception are sexual, that God doesn't like them in your communication. Or like I said, I'd read the manuscript once and I couldn't finish it. I had to call the lady. She did work with sex workers, and the language is so antagonistic about sex work. I had to drop the manuscript. You don't finish. I had to call her. I said, "Madam, you are pastor's wife, Abby. You're a pastor." She now laughed. I said, "Even the way you are writing, must you go and do the work with sex workers? Why are you judging them this heavy?" But by the time we finished the manuscript writing workshop, she understood. And our discussion changed entirely. You must be seen as subjective because that's who you are. Don't bring your values. Don't bring your values into your writing. And one of the other ways where you also must learn to deceitful is the way you write. Don't use a they-them language that establishes a hierarchy that makes you as a researcher superior in your communication. No, you must be sure that the way you write is plain, level ground. It's not about they, them, You must write your sentences in a way that does not convey they, them sense, and you are doing them a favor. Okay. Also, when you use language, it must be inclusive. You don't do policeman, you do police officer. You don't do mankind, you do human race. You don't do chairman, you do chairperson, because that is the world we are. It's a world that is, um, gender sensitive. And like I said, you avoid labeling the normal girls versus lesbian girls. Who says lesbian girls are abnormal? This is the judgment. It might look so plain to you. Or the innocent child. Which child is not innocent? You don't use those language. You can be using it in your private rooms and your normal other life, but in the manuscript you don't bring it. And this is the value lady one where I said about they and we. They are always sick. So there's already a dichotomy. When you say they, it means your research subjects is different from you and you're placing yourself at an higher hierarchy. But if you change that day to people, describe who those they are. People with immune defects are always sick. Then it removes the dichotomy. Describe the day, don't use the day. Day is a terminology that conveys, it creates a bridge, it creates a wall. And attend to grammar and numbers. The difficulty is not to write, but to write what you mean. It's once again emphasizing the precision. Precision. This is science. It's precision. It's precision. And that's one of the power that I talk about in your results. When you're writing your results, write your results with precision. Do not summarize. It is not in your results section that you start to write majority, about 1/4. That is in your discussion. It's the result is exactly what it is, 25.32, 15.99. Okay, precision. Punctuation matters. You must learn to punctuate. There was a paper I read, and the person was using comma. I'd seen it so many times. I had to call a communication person. It's that's the way people write changes. Everything now, comma, and the person laughed. People don't know how to write and use punctuation. You must learn how to read it. And once again, that's somebody who does English. English is not a primary language. You must get people on your team. In the past, when dollars was one naira was 1 to 1 or 1 to 5, and I could afford it, I had two editors, one English person and one American person. Two editors. So if I'm going to an English journal, she reads. If I'm going to an American journal, he reads, and I paid them. My American editor, it was there permanently. For every paper I write is $100 so that it can read. The punctuations are right and I'm communicating appropriately. That's the much investment I made. It was when money became difficult that I now did a team, and then Jolisha is the English person on my team. Because once the read is, I mean, the errors are less. I'm communicating appropriately. Key journals, you must be, like I say, you must be native intelligence. There's native intelligence in what you do. Key journals are not Nigerian journals. They are American Eurocentric journals. So I must speak their language. I must be able to communicate like them. So I do that. So let's look at this briefly. I'm running behind time. This is a sentence. A man without a woman is nothing. And then they said, you guys punctuate. And the man wrote, a woman, comma, without a man is nothing. While the woman wrote, a woman, colon, without her, man is nothing. The same set of words, but yet different punctuation. Full stop, commas, and colon. And see how that same sentence is conveying two meaning. So punctuation is everything. Punctuation, do the right punctuation, read it over and over, and be sure that the way you've punctuated is actually conveying the meaning of the words you want to say. There are simple things. Please note that once your numbers are above 10, no, above 9, you can use them with figures. Once they're less than that, they must be words. The exceptions to that when you're writing with measures, or when you're writing in terms of mathematical functions, or when you're writing in terms of exact dates, or when you're writing in terms of series, you might use the figures for numbers that are less than 10, but otherwise, once they are less than 10, you use words, not numbers. And then the rest of the story is ours to make. We wait and we celebrate. Never be afraid to try anything new. Remember that amateurs made the ark and it withstood the 40 days of rain, whereas the Titanic was built by professionals and it did not withstand the day of rain. So don't be afraid. As I share, every professional, they did something the first time. That was always the first time to their story. So do your own first, write your own first story and move on. When you're ready to publish, remember once again, I said you must share it with your peers, ensure the title is accurate, ensure the abstract is in line with what the journal says. This is also one of the things I see with Nigerians. We are just not patient enough to define things. Do not assume what it is. Go check it. The format, is it structured or not structured? The length, and then go through your introduction. Is this okay? Look at the rest of the text. Is it in the right sequence? Make sure you check your tables, redo the calculation and be sure it's 100%, redo the figures and add up and make sure that you're telling the same thing. Be sure that nothing is missing. Your visuals are there, your referencing styles are correct, and all your references are in place. Verify the format, put numbers to your pages, double check, write your cover letter. Please know that your cover letter is very important. I have had to get a reject on the cover letter, but because I know the editor, I asked why. And it says the cover letter. This journal is oral health. Well, I did energy and oral health. Rather than emphasizing the oral health aspect in my cover letter, I was emphasizing the energy. The journal is not an energy journal. So the research assistant sent it back. The very first person who was screening sent it back. But we're going to write an entire series on SDG, and we're going to do it in MBMC oral health. So I went to ask people that. So I had to resubmit and rewrite the cover letter. But that was because I had a privilege communicating effectively with the editor. If I didn't, that was the end. So the cover letter is important. Take it seriously. Write the editor's name. Just go to the journal, look for the name of the editor, and write, rather than writing dear sir, it starts to say that there's familiarity, and you could only get that because you studied about the journal. Include the title of the manuscript. Include a key about the brief findings, a brief about the key findings, and how that is relevant to the audience of the journal. Give the details of the corresponding authors. If they ask you to suggest reviewers, please include some of them. Ask you, I think Frontiers will do that. And then if there's any other statement that the journal requires you to put, please state it. Please, once again, read the journal instructions. They would give instructions, and some give instructions about what they want in their cover letter. So please read it and write. And once you have sent out, if I put my words and Kudu's words on the table, that if you follow the rules you have set, what you're going to get is a reviewer's comment. It's not going to be a reject. You will get a reject, however, if you submitted it to the wrong journal. I'm doing oral health, and then you send it to tobacco or a journal that is not, looking at, for example, I've sent a paper to International Journal of Pediatric Dentistry, and they said, no, they collect nationals, they only take papers that has a global face. Okay, so if you send that, it will get a reject. But otherwise, you follow the rules we shared with you in the last 19 weeks, you would get comments, not a reject. So once you send comments back to you, deal with this comment respectfully. Remember that reviewers are volunteers. Look at the comments. Be happy you get a comment. If you send a journal to a manuscript to a journal and you don't get comments, do not celebrate it. It's bad news. Ask why there is no comment. Okay, it's usually bad news. It's not 100% times that is bad news. If there is no comment, they will congratulate you and let you know that you did not receive comments. Or you see the peer reviewers' comments that says there's nothing to comment about. And then you celebrate that. But you send manuscript to your journal, then they just move it to the final publication. Just withdraw your journal. That's a bad one. That's plagiarize. Those journals, predator journals. Welcome. Be happy with the comments. Deal with every single comment thoroughly. Reply to every single comment. And if there are comments you don't agree with, respectfully explain why with evidence you don't agree with. And there are times you will have that. Or you can't have 10 comments and don't agree with 9. It doesn't make sense. And then you send back, the reviewers will be happy. They will then accept. And then the journal sends to you a Gallup proof. Please read the Gallup proof. There might be errors. Many times there are errors. At times I look at my papers and I say, what? Where's this error? Did I capture it? I'm not somebody that's good with reading all over. In my team, there's Joma Fatema. He reads over. So I wait. Even if I wait for Joma, Joma will read over. Carlos will read over. Okay, so read your proof, make corrections, and return your proof in time. Return it in time. And when you publish, guys, celebrate. Celebrate, darling. Publishing a paper is a major. Publishing a paper in a Q1 journal, Q2 journal is a major achievement. Put down your hair, raise up your legs, celebrate it, and share it widely. Don't just share the paper, share the brief. Many times when I publish, I go onto LinkedIn and I share, a blog around it. And that gets people interested in your papers. At least you put it in their face. Know that every minute, God knows how many papers are published. I'm sure it's not less than 1,000. So you must put that in the face of people and let them celebrate with you. What I used to do in the past is that I go through the list of references. I get their emails and I send the paper to all of them and I thank them for their papers and let them know that based on their papers, I was able to do this. It's tedious, but I used to do it and I get good comments. I engage again and we discuss. So rejoice. Finally, practice was what make perfect. Review manuscripts and engage as a peer reviewer. When you do that, you also get new ideas. You see how they write and read regularly. Read beyond your scope because life is varied and then you can pull things together. Never compromise truth in the name of writing paper. Do not say something is statistically significant when it's not, in the name of looking for p-value. If your p-value is 0.051, that is not statistically significant. Okay, don't round it up to 0.05 in the name of forcefully getting p-value. Research is for the general good. It's not about you. Check your grammars, have somebody read through the manuscript before you submit, and build on your work. So your research today will raise the next question. I try to answer that next question and build a portfolio in the same direction. Don't do HPV today and tomorrow you're doing Harris, the day after tomorrow you're doing Ebola. Build a portfolio on the same ground of work. Apologies, I'm going to ask us to extend for about 5 minutes so that I can take questions. I'm on top of the hour. And my final words is writing skills. Writing is a skill. One of the things I tell people is that, look, it's not attached to anybody. It's not attached to professor. It's not attached to anybody. So even you as a student, you can write once you have the skills, but you must learn the skills. It's a skill. And it's a new skill for everybody, anybody in the world. Join learning and be aware that you as a scientist, you have to protect the integrity of science. People trust science. Science builds as a foundation for everything. The science you do in Nigeria is the foundation for global research. Be truthful, maintain integrity and protect integrity because it's about the global good that we're safeguarding. On that note, I want to say thank you. And if there are any questions, I look forward to the questions. Over to you, Kudus.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm sure the fellows are equipped to start writing, and I'm sure some of them have started writing. You can't have it better. Thank you very much, Prof. Really appreciate it. I also picked some lessons from this session. And talking about reading, there is something Prof often mentioned. I'm not sure if she has mentioned it here. She has an habit to read, I think, over 100 manuscripts in the first 3 months of the year. Prof, am I accurate?
Yes, you're very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an habit that you should also plan. I plan to do that next year, hopefully. So with that, we'll start taking questions.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think there's a hand up, but there's one in the manuscript that says, "How do you go about references in abstract presentation, and what is the recommendation number?" Then there are always no numbers to anything. When you write an abstract, you do not put references within the abstract. When you're doing your presentation, you put your abstract on the last page. Or you can put it. When I do mine, I don't write abstracts at the last page, references on the last page. I write it at the end. Just put the box at the end and put the references that are there. But very few when I'm presenting. Or you don't include references in your abstract when you're submitting. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Isn't it Ashalo or is it Ashalo?
Ashalo, yes.
Okay. No, I thought there was an O in his
Yes,
surname.
ma'am.
Yeah.
All
Please
right,
go
ma.
ahead.
Thank you very much, ma, for the wonderful lecture. Thank you so much, even for this past 19 minutes. So, my question, I have two questions, and I'm so happy that the first has been asked actually by Jeremiah about learning how to constrain the entirety of the abstracts to fit into the required word count for some journals and for some presentations. And you explained it in learning the art of writing with precision and also doing it with a team. So my next question will be, I've seen a couple of abstracts that I've seen, just like you mentioned, followed definitely the pattern, the outline of the introduction, the methodology, the results, and the conclusion that you gave us. But I want to ask, ma, is it appropriate in the result section to insert figures and tables and graphs? Because I saw a call for abstract by European cardiothoracic surgeon for their last meeting, and they gave a template for the abstract submission. And in that abstract template is a room to insert figures and tables. And some of the abstracts that were submitted actually had figures, tables, and graphs. So I want to ask, is it appropriate, ma?
Once again, thank you for a good question. That's not a no. It's not a no. like I've said, and I keep repeating, you must follow the norms of wherever you're going. If you're going to a journal, follow the norms of the journal. If you're going for a conference, follow the norms of the conference. If the conference is giving you room to put your table, they will tell you how many tables they can accept. If they're giving you rooms to put figures, they will tell you the number of figures they can accept. But the norm is that's not a norm. Just like I said, I've got a journal that says don't put figures. They don't want figures. It's 150 abstracts, no figures. It's not structured. Go and look at, you must never, this is one of the things I say with Nigerians. You just do things because that's how you think you know it. You must read the instructions. I've even seen it. I mean, I remember we went for a retreat. I've seen it for a major grants, and they never read this is general. But for the journal, go read the instructions for the journal and adhere to the instructions of the journal. If it is the conference, go read the instructions for the conference and adhere to the instructions of the conference. But generally, when there are no instructions, what we have told you is the guideline. I hope that helps you. Over.
Yes, ma. Thank you so much, ma.
Excellent. Excellent. I think we're 6 minutes after time.
And I think that's the
Yeah.
last question.
Okay. There's a question? Yes. What's it?
I think that is the last question. I'm sure there's another question.
Oh, excellent. All right, then. Thanks for being here. Over to you, produce to close. It was my pleasure. I look forward to engaging with one-on-one with you and learning how far you've gone. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. That's from me. Over to you, Kudus.
Yeah, thank you, man. That would be all for today. The next 2 weeks we'll be back again to take grant writing. And I'm sure you guys will learn a lot from it. Get your paper ready to jot and learn from the experts, speak to you about grant writing. With that, I'll say have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Bye.